The rescue ship moved slowly through the floating pieces of metal and glass. Yuna stood near the window and looked at the destroyed warship. It was a Vecra vessel. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vecra. They were predators. They had scales like reptiles, claws that could cut through metal, and eyes as black as the space between stars. Most species stayed far away from them. "No life signs," said the pilot. "We should leave." But Yuna was already walking toward the airlock. She was a xenobiologist, a person who studied alien life. Before that, she had been a combat medic in the war. She had seen death many times. She had also seen miracles. "I want to check," she said. The captain frowned. "It is dangerous. The Vecra are not friendly to humans." "The Vecra are not friendly to anyone," Yuna replied. But someone sent a distress signal. Someone might still be alive. She put on her spacesuit and stepped into the broken ship. The halls were dark. Bodies lay on the floor. Adult Vecra, frozen in death. Their claws still extended. They had died fighting something, but what? Yuna did not know. Her scanner made a small sound. Life signs. Weak, but real. She followed the signal through the ship. She climbed over broken walls and walked around holes in the floor. Finally, she found a sealed door. The scanner showed 4 life signs inside. Very small, very faint. Yuna forced the door open. Inside was a nursery. Small beds lined the walls. Toys were scattered on the floor. And in the corner, 4 small shapes huddled together in the darkness. Cubs, Vecra cubs. They were the size of human children. Maybe 5 or 6 years old in human terms. Their scales were softer than adult Vecra, more gray than black. Their eyes caught the light from Yuna's helmet and reflected it back like mirrors. One of them growled. It was a warning sound. Yuna stopped moving. She looked at the bodies near the door. Adult Vecra, probably caretakers, had died protecting this room. These children had been alone in the dark for days, maybe weeks. They were hungry. They were scared. And now a strange alien had entered their space. "It is okay," Yuna said softly. She knew they could not understand her words, but they might understand her tone. She sat down on the floor. She removed her helmet. Even though the air was cold and thin, she wanted them to see her face. The cubs watched her. The largest one kept growling. The smallest one trembled. Yuna did not move. She just sat there, breathing slowly, making herself as small and non-threatening as possible. Minutes passed. Then, an hour. Her crew called her on the radio, asking if she was safe. She told them to wait. Finally, the smallest cub moved. It crawled forward. Just a little bit. Its black eyes studied Yuna's face. It sniffed the air near her hand. Yuna stayed still. The small cub made a soft sound, not a growl. Something else. Something sad. Slowly, carefully, Yuna extended her hand. The cub flinched, but did not run. Yuna waited. The cub looked at her hand for a long time. Then it pressed its small head against her palm. Its scales were warm. Yuna felt her heart break and rebuild itself in the same moment. "I am going to help you," she whispered. "All of you." The other cubs watched this. The largest one stopped growling. One by one, they crept closer. They surrounded Yuna, sniffing her suit, touching her arms with their small, clawed hands. They were testing her, deciding if she was safe. Yuna did not rush them. She let them come to her. When her crew finally arrived at the nursery door, they found Yuna sitting in a circle of Vecra cubs. The creatures were no longer growling. They were pressed against her sides, seeking warmth. "What are you doing?" the captain demanded. "Those are Vecra." "They are children," Yuna said. "They are coming with us." The captain's face turned red. "That is against protocol. The Vecra are dangerous, even the young ones." Command will never allow this. Then I will make them allow it. Yuna stood up slowly. The cubs stood with her, staying close to her legs. These children did nothing wrong. They did not choose to be born Vecra. They are alone, and they are scared. And they will die if we leave them here. The Vecra would not do the same for human children, the captain argued. Yuna looked at him. Her eyes were hard. Then we will be better than the Vecra. The captain wanted to argue more, but something in Yuna's face stopped him. He had seen that look before, in soldiers who had made a decision and would not change their minds, even if it killed them. Fine, he said. But they stay in quarantine. And this is your responsibility. If anything goes wrong, it falls on you. I understand, Yuna said. She led the cubs through the broken ship and onto the rescue vessel. They walked in a line behind her, their small, clawed feet making soft sounds on the metal floor. The crew stared at them with fear in their eyes. The cubs stared back with confusion in theirs. In the quarantine room, Yuna set up beds and brought water and food. The cubs did not eat. They did not sleep. They just sat in the corner and watched her. The largest cub, the one who had growled the most, watched her the closest. His black eyes followed her every movement. But there was no anger in those eyes now. There was something else. Hope. Maybe. Yuna sat down near the containment field and looked back at him. I do not know if you can understand me, she said. But I promise you, I will not let anyone hurt you. You are safe now. The cub did not respond. But he did not look away either. It was a start. The first week was very hard. The cubs refused to eat the food Yuna brought them. They paced back and forth in the quarantine room like animals in a cage. They did not sleep. When anyone except Yuna came near the door, they growled and showed their teeth. The crew of the Horizon's Edge grew more afraid every day. They are monsters, Yuna heard a crew member whisper. She is keeping monsters on our ship. Yuna ignored them. She spent every free moment in the quarantine room, studying the cubs, learning about them. She read everything she could find about Vecra culture and biology. She learned that Vecra formed bonds through shared experiences. They trusted those who faced danger with them. They respected those who showed no fear. So Yuna showed no fear. She started eating her meals in the quarantine room. She sat on the floor with her food and ate slowly, ignoring the cubs completely. At first, they watched her with suspicion, but after a few days, they began to creep closer. The smallest cub, who Yuna had started calling Suni, was always the first to approach. Yuna offered Suni a piece of her food. The cub sniffed it carefully, then turned away. But she did not growl. Progress. Yuna also started sleeping near the quarantine room. She brought a blanket and pillow and set them up just outside the containment field. The cubs could see her. They could hear her breathing. Every night, they watched her fall asleep. Every morning, they watched her wake up. Slowly, they began to relax. Yuna gave them names. The largest cub, the protector, she called Kor. The fierce female who always stood ready to fight, she called Bora. The playful one who sometimes forgot to be scared, she called Tal. And the smallest, the one who had first touched her hand, remained Suni. She spoke to them constantly. She told them about Earth, about humans, about her own childhood. She sang songs from her home country. She did not know if they understood any of it, but they listened. One night, everything changed. Yuna was working late in her lab when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed. A voice announced that a containment breach had occurred. Yuna ran. She found the security team in the corridor outside the quarantine room. They had weapons drawn. In front of them stood Bora, the fierce cub. She had somehow broken through the containment field. Her claws were extended. Her teeth were showing. "Stand down," the security chief shouted. "We will fire." "No." Yuna pushed past them. She stepped between the weapons and the cub. "Are you crazy?" the chief yelled. "Move." But Yuna did not move. She looked at Bora. The cub's eyes were wild with fear. She was not attacking. She was defending. She was scared. Bora, Yuna said softly. It is okay. No one will hurt you. Bora growled. Her claws were very close to Yuna's throat. One quick movement, and she could kill the human easily. Yuna did not step back. She did not show fear. She just kept talking, her voice calm and steady. I know you are scared. I know this place is strange and frightening, but you are safe here. I will not let anyone hurt you. I promise. The seconds stretched out like hours. The security team held their breath. Everyone expected blood. Instead, Bora's growl slowly faded. Her claws lowered. And then, very slowly, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against Yuna's chest. Yuna had read about this. It was a Vecra gesture of complete trust and submission. Bora was saying, with her body, that she accepted Yuna as her leader, her protector, her family. Yuna wrapped her arms around the cub and held her tight. I have you, she whispered. After that night, everything was different. The cubs stopped treating Yuna as a stranger. They treated her as pack. They followed her everywhere she went on the ship. They slept in a pile around her bed. When she laughed, they made strange sounds that might have been their version of laughter. When she was sad, they pressed close to her and would not leave. The crew still feared them. But now they also saw something else. One day, a crew member got angry at Yuna about something small. He raised his voice and stepped toward her aggressively. Before anyone could react, all 4 cubs were on their feet. They did not growl. They did not show their teeth. They just stood there, completely still, their black eyes fixed on the man. The silence was more terrifying than any sound. The man stepped back immediately. He apologized. Yuna looked at her cubs. That was not necessary. Kor tilted his head. He had learned a few words of common by now. He was loud at you, he said slowly. We protect. Yuna smiled despite herself. Thank you, but not everyone who is loud is dangerous. We still protect, Kor said firmly. Yuna could not argue with that. A message came from Coalition High Command. They had learned about the cubs. They were not happy. A tribunal had been called. Yuna would have to bring the cubs before the commanders and explain why she had kept them. If the commanders decided she was wrong, the cubs would be taken away. Or worse, Tejo, the diplomatic officer, gave her the news. His face was worried. They see the cubs as a threat, he said. Or as a political problem. Either way, this will not be easy. Yuna nodded. She had known this day would come. That night, she sat with her cubs in her quarters. They sensed her worry. They pressed close to her, their warm bodies surrounding her like a shield. We might have to go to a difficult place, Yuna told them. There will be many aliens there. Many of them will be afraid of you. Some will want to take you away from me. The cubs looked at her with their dark eyes. We will not leave you, Kor said. Never, Bora added. Her voice was fierce. Suni climbed into Yuna's lap. She was getting too big for this, but she did it anyway. You are our Yunma, she said. This was the name they had created for her. Yun, from her name. Ma, from the Vecra word for heart mother. Where you go, we go. Yuna held them all as tightly as she could. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The journey to Coalition High Command took 12 days. 12 days of waiting. 12 days of worry. Yuna tried to stay calm for the cubs, but they could sense her fear. They stayed closer to her than ever before. The coalition was an alliance of 12 different species from across the galaxy. Most of them had evolved from prey animals. They were herbivores, herd creatures, beings who survived by running and hiding. Predators made them nervous, and no predators made them more nervous than the Vecra. Humans were different. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. They were not the fastest or the strongest. But they were patient. They could track prey for days. They could survive wounds that would kill other creatures. And strangest of all, they formed bonds with other predators. On Earth, humans had taken wolves and turned them into dogs. They had invited cats into their homes. They had trained birds of prey to hunt beside them. No other species in the galaxy did this. To most aliens, it was madness. Mina, Yuna's assistant and translator, explained this to her one evening. "They do not understand you," Mina said. She was young, nervous, but very smart. To them, keeping a Vecra cub is like keeping a bomb in your bedroom. They cannot imagine why anyone would do it. "They are not bombs," Yuna said. "They are children. I know that. You know that. But the commanders do not know that. They have never seen a Vecra as anything except an enemy." Yuna looked through the window at the stars. "Then we will show them something new." But Mina had found worrying news. She had intercepted secret messages between coalition members. Some species wanted the cubs killed before they could grow into adult Vecra. Others wanted to study them, to find weaknesses in the Vecra species. A few wanted to use them as hostages, as weapons against the Vecra people. No one was talking about letting them live freely. "This is bad," Tejo said when he heard the news. "Very bad. The cards are stacked against us. Then we will change the game," Yuna replied. The cubs were growing fast. They were bigger now than when Yuna had found them. Their scales were darker, harder. Their claws were sharper. But their hearts were still the hearts of children. Tal, the playful one, had learned to make a sound like a cat purring. He had seen a video of Earth cats and decided he wanted to do that too. His purring was terrible, rough and growling, nothing like a real cat. But he did it every time he wanted to make Yuna smile. Suni collected small treasures and brought them to Yuna every morning. A shiny bolt from the engine room. A colorful wire from the electrical panel. A smooth stone that someone had brought from a distant planet. Each gift was presented with serious ceremony, as if Suni was giving Yuna the most precious thing in the universe. Bora, once the fiercest cub, had started asking Yuna about her work as a medic. She wanted to know how to help people, how to fix wounds, how to save lives. "You saved us," Bora said once. "I want to save others too." And Kor, the eldest, had become Yuna's shadow. He watched everything, learned everything, protected everything. When Yuna was tired, he made sure she rested. When she forgot to eat, he brought her food. He was growing into something remarkable, a predator who chose to guard rather than hunt. One evening, Suni asked Yuna a question that broke her heart. "Yunma," the small cub said, "why do the others fear us? We are small. We have not hurt anyone. Why do they look at us like we are monsters?" Yuna pulled Suni close. "Some people fear what they do not understand. They have only ever seen Vecra as enemies. They do not know that Vecra can be kind. They do not know that Vecra can love. Will they ever know? We will teach them," Yuna said. Together. Then came news that changed everything. A Vecra ship made contact with the coalition. On board was War Chief Dren, one of the most powerful Vecra military leaders. He was also the father of the 4 cubs. Everyone had believed he was dead, killed in the same attack that destroyed his ship. But he had survived. He was badly wounded, missing an arm, and covered in scars. But he was alive. And he had learned that his children had also survived. The coalition expected Dren to be furious. A human had taken his cubs. A human was raising them as her own. Surely he would demand them back. Surely he would threaten war. But Dren did not threaten. He did not demand. He sent only one message. "I will attend the tribunal. 2-3. Also. 2-3. 2-3. No one knew what this meant. Was it a threat? A peace offering? A trap? Yuna received the news with a calm face, but inside, her heart was racing. She had never considered what would happen if the cub's real father appeared. Would they want to leave her? Would Dren try to take them by force? She looked at her cubs, who were playing a game in the corner of her quarters. They were laughing, a strange hissing sound that she had learned to love. Kor noticed her watching. He stood up and walked over to her. "We heard the news," he said. "About our father. I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. It is okay." Kor placed his clawed hand on her arm. "We are happy he is alive. But you are our Yunma now. Nothing will change that." The other cubs gathered around her. Bora nodded firmly. Tal pressed against her side. Suni climbed into her lap again. "We are your pack," Suni said. "Forever." Yuna held them close and tried not to cry. Tomorrow, they would arrive at Coalition High Command. Tomorrow, they would face the commanders, the politicians, the enemies, and perhaps a father who wanted his children back. Tomorrow, everything could fall apart. But tonight, they were together. Tonight, they were family. And that was enough. The Grand Assembly Chamber was the largest room Yuna had ever seen. It stretched out like a small city, under a dome of glass and metal. Hundreds of seats rose in circles around a central platform. Representatives from all 12 coalition species filled those seats. Commanders in military uniforms, diplomats in formal robes, politicians with cold eyes and calculating faces. The noise was incredible. Voices shouted in a dozen different languages. Arguments bounced off the walls. Accusations flew back and forth like weapons. This was the heart of galactic power, and today, all of that power was focused on one question: what to do with the human woman and her Vecra cubs. Yuna stood outside the great doors, waiting to enter. She wore her best uniform. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed no fear, though her hands trembled slightly. Teho stood beside her. "Are you ready?" "No," Yuna admitted. Mina was on her other side, clutching her translation device. "Whatever happens, I am with you." Yuna nodded. Then she looked behind her. The cubs stood in a perfect line. They were not children anymore, not really. They had grown during the long months on the ship. Kor was now taller than Yuna. Bora's claws could cut through steel. Even Suni, the smallest, was strong enough to break bones with her grip, but they were still hers. "Stay close to me," Yuna told them. "Move when I move. Stop when I stop. No matter what anyone says or does, stay calm. Can you do that?" "Yes, Yunma," they answered together. The doors opened. Yuna stepped into the chamber. The noise continued for a moment as she walked down the central aisle toward the platform. Heads turned. Eyes focused on her. But she was just a human. Humans were common. Humans were not very interesting. Then the cubs emerged from the doorway behind her. They moved in perfect formation. Kor on the left, Bora on the right, Tal and Suni in the center. Their scales caught the light and seemed to glow. Their black eyes swept across the chamber, taking in everything, missing nothing. They moved like shadows, like ghosts, like death itself. Walking calmly through the heart of power, they were beautiful, they were terrifying, and they were completely focused on the small human woman in front of them. The noise in the chamber died. Conversations stopped mid-word. Commanders who had been arguing fell silent. Politicians who had been shouting suddenly had nothing to say. Every single being in that massive room turned to watch the impossible sight before them. Vecra cubs, apex predators from one of the most feared species in the galaxy. Walking calmly, peacefully, protectively, behind a human woman, as if she was the most important thing in the universe. Even the commanders stopped talking. Yuna reached the central platform and turned to face the assembly. Her cubs arranged themselves around her, not as prisoners, but as guards. They stood at attention, their posture perfect, their eyes alert. High Commander Oren spoke first. He was ancient, his skin gray and wrinkled, his eyes tired but sharp. He led the coalition fleet, and had more power than anyone else in the room. "Human Yuna," he said, his voice echoing through the silent chamber. "You stand accused of violating 17 different protocols. You have taken enemy children without permission. You have raised them without oversight. You have created a situation that threatens the peace between the Coalition and the Vecra Empire. What do you have to say?" Quote, Yuna stepped forward. She did not look nervous. She did not look sorry. "With respect, High Commander," she said, "I saved 4 lives. That is all I did." The chamber erupted. Voices shouted objections. An ambassador from one of the prey species stood up and pointed at the cubs. "Those are not lives," he screamed. "Those are weapons waiting to be used. They are ticking time bombs. They should be contained or destroyed before they can do harm." Other voices agreed. The noise grew louder. Yuna waited for it to quiet. "May I tell you about these weapons?" she asked calmly. The chamber fell silent again. Yuna looked at Suni. "This one brings me gifts every morning. She gives them to me like they are treasures, because to her, making me happy is the most important thing she can do." She looked at Tal. "This one learned to purr. He saw a video of earth cats and decided he wanted to do that. His purring sounds terrible, but he does it every time he wants to make me laugh." She looked at Bora. "This one wants to be a medic. She asks me every day how to help people, how to save lives. She was the fiercest of all of them when I found her. Now she dreams of healing instead of hurting." She looked at Kor. "And this one watches over me. He makes sure I eat when I forget. He makes sure I sleep when I am tired. He has the claws to kill anyone in this room, but he chooses to protect instead." Yuna faced the assembly again. "They are not weapons. They are not bombs. They are children. And I am their mother. I did not give birth to them, but I chose them. And they chose me. Try to take them from me." The last words were not a plea. They were a warning. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then a new voice spoke. "I believe her." Everyone turned. A Vecra had stood up in the upper seats. He was massive, scarred, missing one arm. War Chief Dren, the father of the cubs. He walked down toward the platform. Coalition guards moved to stop him, but he ignored them. He walked until he stood before Yuna. His cubs watched him with wide eyes, but they did not move from their positions around their Yunma. Dren looked at Yuna. Then, slowly, he lowered himself to one knee. The chamber gasped. In Vecra culture, this was the highest honor. It meant he accepted her as worthy of his bloodline. It meant he was giving her the status of family. "She did what I could not," Dren said, his voice loud enough for all to hear. "She saved my children. She raised them. They carry my blood, but they carry her heart. Among my people. This makes her family." He stood and turned to face the assembly. His eyes were cold. His voice was hard. "Harm her, and the Vecra will answer." The chamber exploded into chaos. But Yuna did not hear it. She was looking at her cubs, who were looking at her, and in their black eyes, she saw something that made all the fear and doubt worth it. She saw love, and she knew that whatever happened next, they had already won. 6 months had passed since the tribunal. Yuna stood on the observation deck of Coalition Station Prime and watched ships move across the stars. Human ships, Vecra ships, ships from a dozen other species, all of them working together, preparing for something that no one had expected. The galaxy had changed. The tribunal had ruled in Yuna's favor. The cubs would stay with her. War Chief Dren was granted permission to visit them whenever he wished. And a new law was created. Children of any species, no matter the politics between their people, would be protected. It was a small change. But small changes could grow into big ones. The story of the human woman and her Vecra cubs had spread across the galaxy. News stations played videos of the tribunal. Social networks shared pictures of the cubs playing with human children on the station. A Vecra ambassador had made a public statement thanking humanity for teaching his people something new about their own young. Other species began to look at humans differently. They were not just persistence predators. Not just the strange aliens who never stopped chasing. They were nurturers. They were adopters. They took creatures that should have been enemies and made them family. Some species found this comforting. Others found it terrifying. But everyone respected it. Yuna's cubs had grown into adolescents now. They were taller than most humans. Their scales fully hardened. Their claws fully grown. They were not children anymore. But they were not quite adults either. They were something in between, learning and growing every day. Kor had started studying diplomacy. He sat in on meetings between human and Vecra officials, watching, learning, asking questions. He wanted to build bridges between worlds. He wanted to prevent the kind of wars that had killed so many of his people. Bora trained as a rescue medic, just like she had always wanted. She worked with human medical teams, learning their techniques, combining them with Vecra strength and speed. She had already saved 3 lives during a hull breach emergency. The people she saved did not care that she was a predator. They only cared that she had pulled them from the fire. Tal had become something unexpected. A teacher. Human children loved him. They were not afraid of his claws or his teeth. They climbed on him like he was a living playground. He taught them games from Vecra culture, and they taught him games from Earth. Sometimes Yuna found him in the children's center, surrounded by laughing kids, making his terrible purring sound while they tried to purr back. And Suni, the smallest, had become the biggest. She had grown taller than all her siblings, though she was still gentle, still kind, still bringing Yuna small treasures every morning. She was training with both Vecra warriors and human soldiers, learning to fight, learning to protect, but she never forgot who she was protecting. "You are our Yunma," she told Yuna often. Always. But peace never lasted forever. The enemy that had destroyed the Vecra ship, the enemy that had almost killed the cubs, had returned. They were called the Hollow Ones. They came from outside the galaxy, from the dark spaces between stars. No one knew what they wanted. No one knew how to stop them. War was coming. The coalition had formed a joint defense force. Humans and Vecra would fight side by side for the first time in history. Other species would support them. The galaxy was uniting against a common threat, and Yuna had been offered a command. She had said no at first. She was a xenobiologist, a medic. She was not a warrior, but her cubs had volunteered for the defense force. All 4 of them. They were not children anymore. They were young adults, strong and capable, and ready to fight for the world that had accepted them. "If they go, I go," Yuna had said. Now she stood in a new assembly chamber, smaller than the grand chamber, but no less important. This was the military briefing room. Officers from 20 different species filled the seats. Maps of the galaxy glowed on the walls. The Hollow Ones were coming, and everyone needed to be ready. Yuna walked to the front of the room. She wore a commander's uniform now. It still felt strange on her shoulders. Behind her walked her cubs. They were not cubs anymore. They were warriors. Kor moved with the calm confidence of a diplomat who understood that words could be weapons too. Bora wore a medic's kit alongside her battle armor. Tal's playfulness had become the unpredictability of a skilled fighter. And Suni, the smallest who had become the biggest, walked with a grace that made veteran soldiers step back in respect. The officers fell silent as they entered. Some of them had been at the original tribunal. Some of them had wanted the cubs destroyed. Now, those same officers watched them with different eyes. These were not enemies. These were allies. "We will face the Hollow Ones together," Yuna said to the assembly. Humans and Vecra, predator and prey, all of us, united. Some of you doubted that this was possible. Some of you feared that predators could never stand beside others without violence. But look at us. She gestured to her cubs. They were raised by a human. They chose to protect instead of destroy. They chose to heal instead of hurt. They chose love over fear. And now they will fight to protect the galaxy that gave them a home. She looked at the officers. This is what we can be. This is what we can achieve. Not enemies. Not monsters. Family. The room was silent. Then, one by one, officers began to stand. Humans first, then Vecra, then others. They stood in respect, in acceptance, in hope. Yuna felt tears in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. After the briefing, Yuna stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched out before her, beautiful and cold. Somewhere out there, danger was coming. But here, right now, there was peace. Footsteps behind her. Familiar footsteps. Suni stood beside her, looking at the same stars. "Are you afraid, Yunma?" she asked. "Yes," Yuna admitted. "I am always afraid. But I do not let fear stop me. You taught us that." Suni leaned down and pressed her forehead against Yuna's, the Vecra gesture of complete trust. "You taught us everything." The other cubs joined them. Kor on one side, Bora on the other. Tal pressing close. They surrounded Yuna like they had when they were small, when they were scared, when she was the only light in their darkness. But they were not small anymore. They were not scared anymore. They were her children, her warriors, her family. "Whatever happens," Suni said, echoing words from long ago, "we stay with you, Yunma." Yuna smiled and held them close. "I know," she whispered. The doors to the future opened. The galaxy waited, and together, they had started as strangers. A human and 4 frightened predator cubs. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before. A family built not on blood, but on choice. Not on fear, but on love. And that love would carry them through whatever darkness lay ahead. Together. Always.